Hi, and welcome to CMO Journeys. I'm Christian Badak, and on this show, I talk with the marketing leaders shaping some of today's most interesting brands. We get into their career paths, how they think about marketing, and how they work with agencies. SBS is a global financial technology company that provides software platforms powering banks, lenders, and payment systems worldwide. They're in the middle of a repositioning themselves from a legacy core banking provider to a more modern cloud and AI-driven platform company. Adam Shpiro is the Chief Marketing Officer at SBS, coming into the role after leading global go-to-market, which gives him a unique operator lens on how marketing actually drives growth. Adam, welcome to CMO Journeys.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So this is CMO Journeys. So for our audience, tell us a bit about where you grew up, and if someone had met you when you were, say, 18, would they have predicted that you'd end up as a CMO?
Oh, wow. Probably not. So I'm originally from Israel. I lived there for a little over a decade and then moved around because of my dad's job. We lived in London for a couple of years and in Brussels for about 5 years. And there was a little bit of a fork in the road kind of opportunity there for, what do I do after I graduate from high school, basically. And I decided to go to university in the UK. Happened to be half British. So I went to the University of Bristol and studied mechanical engineering. And actually, like a weirdly large number of engineers, at least in that cohort, decided in my third or 4 years that I was never going to be a particularly good engineer. And so I wanted to do something different. And I remember having this feeling of wanting to be a businessman. I don't think I really knew what it meant to be a businessman, but it didn't stop me from wanting to become one. And I had a lot of friends that were going into management consulting and a lot of other friends that were going into investment banking. And management consulting felt like the lesser of two evils, I guess. I think it was really about the fact that investment bankers were, it just seemed like they were working too hard, frankly. So not to say that management consulting is that much better, but in any case, I went into management consulting straight out of school. And I did that for actually just a little under a year. The reason I left is I had an opportunity to go and work for a business owner in a family office, essentially. It was a British family. The principal had made a lot of money through the legal profession. He sold a law firm that he had started a couple of decades prior, and he basically started making a lot of very diversified types of investments, predominantly in the Caribbean islands, but also in Africa. And he needed somebody to play a leadership role in one of his investments in Africa in particular. So I kind of put my hand up as somebody who was willing to go and live in Malawi and work in agriculture. And that's what I did for 4 years. So from the age of 22 to 26, I was there. I started managing one department and grew to becoming the general manager of the entire business. It was a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, at an early stage in my career, the leadership, exposure that I had was really quite life-changing. And the remit was managing the business, but also looking for other investment opportunities for the family, both in Malawi and in agriculture, but also in other countries and industries focused on southeast parts of Africa, basically. So I got to go to a lot of interesting places and manage a very sort of like raw, unsophisticated business with not a hell of a lot of technology, which I think is a really great way to learn about, the business concepts that you can then apply in lots of different ways. And so when I was 26 and I realized that I'd spent nearly half my 20s living in the middle of nowhere in Africa, I wanted to have a bit more of a traditional, 20s type of experience. And so I decided to go back home to Israel, Tel Aviv specifically. And I thought that, like most people in Tel Aviv, I would just go and work for a startup, right? What do you do in Israel, if you don't work for a startup? I ended up actually working in the early stage venture capital side of things, so still in the startup ecosystem. And when I did that, I realized that I had this fantastic practical business experience from Africa, but not a hell of a lot of business education. And so I started to open up to the idea of going back to school. And in my research, I saw that an MBA seemed to be the thing that made the most sense. I spoke to a lot of people in my network, and I realized that my Africa experience was going to help me stand out from all the Goldmans and McKinseys, basically, that apply to the world's top business schools. No offense to the brilliant people that come out of those two institutions. And I was fortunate to get into Harvard Business School. And so in the summer of 2016, I moved to Boston and got my MBA. I lived in Boston for those 2 years and then moved to New York to work at JP Morgan, where I did a rotational leadership development program, but ended up working in corporate development on the retail banking side. So that was my first foray into fintech. And after about 3 years and change doing that with JP Morgan, mostly in New York, a little short stint in Hong Kong, and then there was COVID. We're kind of different parts of the country, but I ended up joining a digital banking startup, New York based as well. And that was really the first time in my career that I got to work in a truly high growth business. I did that for a little over 2 years when the opportunity to come and join SBS came about. So SBS, as you said, is it's a B2B fintech company that does a lot. So not just digital banking, like the company that I used to work for, but quite a large scope outside of that in core banking, lending, payments, and the like. And when I first joined, it was in the more of a go-to-market role, doing commercial strategy, commercial operations, and I got to work a lot with the marketing team and with the sales team. And then my boss, the chief commercial officer of SBS, asked me if I would take leadership of the marketing team. Now, I'll tell you the first thing I told him when he said that. I said, you do realize that I've never actually worked in marketing before, right? And he said, yeah, that's why I'm asking you to do it. And one of the things that was needed at the time at SBS was somebody that was really going to bring sales and marketing closer together and make sure that we are really focused on prioritization and execution around the areas that made the most sense for us to focus on. So since then, I've been working, within the marketing team, initially with a go-to-market remit, and now as CMO, but still focus on the same set of priorities, which are really about being closer than ever to sales and the market, ensuring that my department runs as one fully aligned marketing team, one with I always say with a capital O-N-E. The best example I can give of that is that I say to my team that if you're the only marketer in the room, it doesn't matter what came up, which other part of the marketing team is responsible for it, you are the only marketer in the room, right? And so you need to take that back and make sure that we can present one united front in front of all of our internal stakeholders. And then finally, that we were going to meet the product lines on a strategic plan. Okay, so we weren't going to help them develop pretty collateral or assets for what it is that they were doing, but actually we were going to engage with them on that strategic level and make sure that we inject that commercial acumen that is needed in order to effectively take a product to market. So I'll pause there and just go to your question about if somebody met me at 18, whether they would imagine I would become a CMO. Probably not. I think maybe they would have guessed that I'd be doing something scientific, I suppose, or engineering related, because I was always a math and physics guy. And like I said, I studied engineering, but things unroll as they do, and you just kind of have to go with it, right?
Yeah. Wow, what a interesting background. What struck me, one of the things that you said is when you were asked to step into this role, and you said that you realize I don't have any marketing background. What did that feel like in that moment to make that leap?
Well, so, the good news is that I had a lot of experience working with marketing. I just sort of sat on the other side. And funnily enough, wearing the marketing hat for, a year and a half now, I sometimes reflect on what was I like to work with for marketing earlier in my career. But I was ready to take the role, and I was very excited because I could tell, I'd already been at SBS for long enough to be able to see the amount of impact that I would be able to have, through leadership of the marketing organization. I do think that the world is changing so quickly right now, and so when you talk about a department in transformation, and I definitely would consider us to be a department in transformation. Usually with a transformation, you know where you are, and hopefully you also know where you're going. I think that today we have to get comfortable with the ambiguity that comes from not knowing where we're going. And almost more important than the destination is developing a muscle for being agile and using new tools and trying new things and experimenting and killing experiments. That's almost more important than starting them sometimes. But it's that muscle for ability to cope with change that I think is sort of table stakes these days, because we don't know exactly where we're going. How could we possibly know where we're going? Right? We haven't talked about anything that's happening in the world, yet in this conversation, but the sort of things that I'm talking about, and I'm sure the listeners, viewers, do as well. And you just have to be able to transform in an agile manner and pivot quickly and try things and fail fast and pick yourself up and move on. So I'll pause there again, but I think that that's just a really big part of the challenge, and frankly speaking, a big part of what makes it fun.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like, along the way you've come across some people that really have trusted you in the roles and promoted you and even brought you into some non-traditional paths that, others wouldn't see. Was there maybe a mentor or some advice or something that you heard along the way or someone you encountered along the way that really influences how you make decisions today?
Yes, several. One in particular, and this dates back to earlier parts of my career, which is the work that I got to do in Africa, and there my boss was a self-made man who had accomplished a lot in his career, and you could see what really just came out of him was passion. He was just the most passionate person about everything that he did. And I remember that one of the last interactions that I had with him was actually after I stopped working with him, but I remained a friend of the family. And when I saw him that time, I remember that he told me that don't like don't sprint. Okay, life is it's a long road, right? And just follow your heart and do something that you love, because you're going to be a hell of a lot better at it than things that you don't love doing. So that's something that's kind of like just stayed with me all this time. And I work in B2B fintech. I would refer to myself as a financial services nerd. I've always kind of been a consumer fintech type of guy, like what kind of credit card do you have in your pocket and why, and rewards and all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, I think that we work so many of our waking hours, right? And so we owe it to ourselves and everybody around us, frankly speaking, to do something we enjoy. And that probably stands out from all the different influences and mentors that I've had as the running kind of priority piece of advice that I just continue to go back to.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, I would agree with that. So now you stepped into the CM roles we talked about after leading global go-to-market. What's changed in your mandate and what maybe stayed the same?
So I'm gonna give you a picture that I actually gave to our CEO when I described to him my vision for the marketing department. And maybe part of the reason that I got the role, or certainly wasn't enough to prevent him from agreeing to giving it to me. I saw from outside in, so outside of marketing, that to do effective go-to-market execution, you really need this like three-legged stool type of collaboration. Three-legged stool meaning if you're missing one, or if one is weak, the whole thing topples over, between product sales and marketing. And obviously the marketing department has a lot of sort of sub teams within it. And I sort of came in and felt like the more of the marketing department that embraces this go-to-market centricity or go-to-market focus, the more effective we were going to be at becoming the growth engine that we want to be at SBS. And so the visual that I sort of just had AI put together quickly was a GTM Pac-Man called GTM, basically slowly but surely eating all of marketing. And of course, there are things that we do within marketing that might feel a little bit further away from the tip of the spear. But even when you work on your visual identity and your brand and stuff like that might feel a little bit more on the corporate marketing side of things. You're still doing it, right, in pursuit of growth, right? And so we view now everything that we do within marketing as somehow driving that go-to-market machine forward, as opposed to thinking that go-to-market is a subset of the marketing set of responsibilities that happens to be shared with sales and products as well. So does that make sense?
It does. It does. So how do you think about that trade-off day to day from brand, positioning to pipeline and revenue?
So I would say that in the spectrum of marketing leaders that you know move forward with real hesitation to do things differently in fear that it might be questioning the brand identity, the visual identity, to those that are kind of like running fast, breaking things, and adjusting thereafter. I would say that I'm closer to the latter than the former. Uh,
Hmm.
I feel like we can always kind of bring it back. I rather that we make a mistake every now and again than driving with a handbrake on the whole time. And so, yeah, our philosophy is to move quickly and to challenge the norms. And if we regret something that we tried, then we kind of we center ourselves back to a position that we're more comfortable with. But we try not to police ourselves too much, and just basically reduce speed. I think these days speed, I've the quality and speed have always been a little bit of a trade-off from one another, and they still are. And we really do pride ourselves on quality in everything that we do in the department. But now we pride ourselves on the quality and speed, not just quality.
Sure. Sure. What so tell us a little bit about the team then. What does your internal team look like? Where maybe are you using partners to, achieve these goals and move as fast as you're trying to move?
Yeah. So we have, in no particular order, a product marketing organization. We have also a field marketing team, and an SDR function, small SDR function that sits closely with the field marketing team. We have digital marketing, which includes our channels, so website and stuff like that. We also have a demand generation team that sits within digital. And then finally, a data center. So the digital marketing team is sort of marketing and marketing operations as well. And then we have a small design team and a content team as well. And what am I forgetting? External communications, so PR, media, stuff like that. So to answer your question, so I run this. First of all, I would say I run the team with a leadership team. My whole career, every leadership role that I've had, dating back to, at this point, I guess 16, 17 years ago, I like to run teams with the notion of a leadership team. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a democracy necessarily for everything, but it does allow us to have like these points of connectivity, because in marketing, almost more than anything else that I've experienced to date in my career, there are just so many lines of connectivity. What content is working on really impacts product marketing, and that really impacts the digital marketing team and the field team. And you can never get away from these, sort of points of connectivity between the different functions. So all the more important, I think it is to have a leadership team where the seat that you get at a table, being in the leadership team, provides you access and exposure to what's happening all around you. The cost you pay for that seat at the table is that everybody else has a view into what you're doing
Mm.
as well. And I like that because it forces accountability between different functions. And it doesn't mean that we get everything right all the time, but it means that we reduce some of the silos that otherwise could exist in the organization. And we lead by example, because we ask of our team members within the department to collaborate cross-functionally well. So if we don't do that at the leadership team, how can we ask of those folks to do it too? In terms of use of third parties and agencies, so we have a couple of different partnerships on the content side of things. We Um, our content is important to us. We like to feed the ecosystem, and to do that effectively, sometimes requires help. But we like to our company is full of experts. We have 3,000 people. We're a company that's full of financial services technology experts, and so we love to give our people a voice and to put some of our knowledge out there in the ecosystem. It's not intellectual property or anything like that, but it's stuff that we think can feed the ecosystem. We are a active participant in the ecosystem. We think it's important to do that. We also on the media side have again a couple of different partnerships that we rely on. I think it's important to focus on what are the things that you have to do really well that differentiate, and that you wouldn't sort of outsource and work with an external party. But it's equally important to recognize the opposite of that, right? The stuff where we're probably never going to be as effective. We don't have the network, or we don't have the reach, or we don't have the whatever it is. And there, sometimes these partnerships can really make the difference between being heard, being found, and not, right? And when we think about wanting to do something like new market entry, or when we want to talk about big accomplishments that we have, or changes in our strategy and stuff like that, we definitely get some of the third party help to make sure that we are doing it in ways that will have a wider reach.
Sure. Obviously, marketing is I mean, everything is really getting upended by AI, and there's just so many different changes that are just evolving so rapidly. What maybe from a go-to-market perspective, or even a marketing perspective, what maybe feels harder to move now than it used to?
Christian, I was thinking of one more area as you were saying that, which is we work with some agencies on our we have an event strategy, an owned event strategy that is we're very good at creating customer intimacy, and bringing our ecosystem together so that we can provide our clients with networking opportunities with one another, and let them benefit from being within the SBS ecosystem. So that's one other area where we leverage the help of third parties that help us do that really well. Sorry, I was thinking about that when you asked the last question. So can I ask you to repeat it, please?
Yeah, sure. From maybe a go-to-market perspective, or just from a more pure marketing perspective, what maybe feels harder today than it used to?
Harder today than it used to. I think that one of the things. So I talked about the muscle that we need to build up in order to transform. Today, it feels like there's a million ways that you can transform all at the same time. And I think that prioritizing has become really, really difficult. Now, we, like many SaaS companies out there, or software companies out there, are, we're trying to do a lot at the same time. And so prioritization can be quite difficult. And when you add to the business as usual, all the ways that, for example, AI can provide opportunities to transform that which we do, it's difficult to put that right there on the BAU priority list, but I think it's necessary. I think if you think of this is my BAU, and if I have enough time when I'm finished with all that, then I can think about transforming, then the transformation never happens. And now when we double click on that transformation, it's not just one or two things. Oh, we need to become a bit more data driven, or, oh, we need to become a little bit more focused, or we need to be, adapt our event strategy a little bit, or we need to be more pragmatic in how we go to market. Today, there's just across every sub team that I mentioned before, there are quite a number of different things that we could be doing, or could be doing with AI, to varying levels of value add, frankly speaking, and it might not be the same for every company. And so I think that just choosing the right stuff to prioritize, the right investments to make, and taking into account both chronology, how meaty a project is, because you want to get started with the low-hanging fruits because you can get value from them more quickly, but you also want to prioritize the things that might be a bit more difficult. But if you don't get started on them today, then there's never a perfect time, right? And so yeah, I would, if I had to choose one thing, I would say prioritization has gotten more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So many options, right? So you mentioned AI. Where do you think AI might replace agencies, and maybe where it won't?
That's the $1 million question, right? It's a, you know, I think that things are just changing so quickly. So if you'd asked me this question 2 months ago or 2 months from now, my answer would have been different and might be again different. But nevertheless, I'll take the best shot with what I got, right? I think that um, from a content perspective, I still think that we see the difference between AI generated content and content that's generated by professionals that understand the industry and do that for a living. Nevertheless, I would expect them to be using AI, right, in what they're doing for us, right? And so, if, like any industry, consulting or the legal industry, or any professional service where traditionally people were kind of charging by the hour or charging by unit of output, which is kind of a proxy for the amount of work that goes in. Um, our expectation is that you know the partners that we choose to work with are also going to be deploying the best technology out there in order to serve us in the best way that they can, right? And if we want to avoid having a difficult conversation about how much we're paying for something, then I think that the service that is provided needs to be a little bit less transactional and just about, okay, you asked for X and here it is, but more about the performance that it's going to generate. So, like, what are your objectives and why are you actually working with us in doing whatever it is that you're doing? So, in this example, content generation, and how can we make sure that we understand your business well enough that our output really helps you meet your goals? And that's very different to just saying, well, you paid for 10, so here are 10. Good luck, right?
Right.
And you could apply that in the media space just as much as you could apply it in content generation. You could also really just boil it down to going the extra mile and making sure that the service that you're providing is helping your customers reach their goals and taking an interest in what their goals really are, as opposed to just saying, all right, well, this is what you contracted me for, so here it is, and good luck. I think that's a great way to maybe see some churn. Because if you're not doing it as an agency, I would imagine that another agency that is might come in, maybe even undercut you because they're better users of technology, and so the economics change altogether. So that's probably the biggest advice I could give.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. So, as you think about that in that vein, you have a pretty complex portfolio, a lot of different regions. What would make an agency feel credible to you versus maybe just another vendor?
I think that having a objectives conversation and a KPIs conversation and showing that they're confident in their ability to take you where you are looking for them to take you. Um, Again, in Hebrew we have a saying. It's called having a big head.
Hmm.
Having a big head basically means that you don't have the blinders on and you understand what is the purpose of what you're doing and where it fits into the bigger purpose, and making sure that it's really doing that and that it's doing that effectively. And so I think that from the early discussions with a new vendor or a new partner, you can see whether they approach things in this way. And similarly for existing relationships, whether you're doing QBRs or you're realigning on strategy for in whatever cadence, the cadence doesn't really matter, but it's that proactivity to make sure that somebody's thinking about you as a client, and making sure that they don't get complacent and that they continue to deliver, obvious value to you in the way that they had, aligned with you in advance. You would be measuring that value. And if that changes, that's okay. But then let's have a conversation about how it looks different now and make sure that we realign towards, what is going to be the most valuable thing for you now. So for me, like beginning of the year, or end of the year, whichever one you think about it, like what are your goals for, how 2026 or whatever, and then just finding the right cadence for revisiting that. Meetings for the sake of meetings are not at all what I'm proposing here, but just making sure that you have that upfront alignment, but then also that you don't lose it over time.
Yeah. No, great advice. Results and outcome focused. So we talked a lot about business. As I wind things down here, I want to talk, close the last question out with outside of work. What's something that you do that helps you reset or think more clearly?
Reset and think more clearly. It has to be sports related for me. There's a lot of recency bias in that. I was in the French Alps not long ago, and there's something about that mountain air that just gets you to relax immediately. It gets you to forget temporarily, and just zoom out of your day to day. Just being outside, being with my family, being with my kids, and doing something where you can't be looking at a screen too much as well. So the slopes are pretty good for that. Is In this day and age, I mean, it's just it's a lot more. It's actually a much better investment of time than relaxing in front of Netflix.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, you get a little bit of nature, you get a little bit of athleticism, all in one. So,
Yeah, you
uh,
get blood flowing, and you I don't know, try to stay young, try to stay healthy.
yeah. And let's hope you're not down the slopes looking at your phone. That could end up not so good. So,
Yes, no, I'm definitely not endorsing that. That's very dangerous.
very good. Well, Adam, this has been great. Thanks again for the conversation, the insights, and to everybody watching, listening. Don't forget to follow CMO Journeys for more conversations with the marketing leaders shaping what's next. I'm Christian Badak. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.